Okay, good morning and welcome to our 7-1 lesson on Pythagorean Theorem, Part 1. If you have my class, we are almost to the end of the packet here. So find the page that says Lesson 7-1, Pythagorean Theorem, Part 1. And you're going to want to start by putting in our vocabulary. We are going to skip around a little bit today, so kind of pay attention. Vocab to begin this. The first word is hypotenuse. And what a hypotenuse is simply it is the longest side of a right triangle. And we're going to label that side with the letter C. And then the other two sides are called the legs. Those are the shorter two sides of the right triangle. Those we will label A and B. Now they can be labeled in any order. But usually when I'm teaching, I like to make A the shortest, then B the next shortest, and then C the longest, like I show in the green triangle here. And the Pythagorean theorem is a formula. So for all right triangles, so this is only triangles that have the 90-degree angle, A squared, the shortest side, plus B squared, the next shortest side, will always equal C squared, the longest side. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we're going to use this formula to figure out some missing side lengths today. Okay, if you need to pause the video now to get the rest of the vocab written, do that. If not, we're going to actually skip examples 1 and 2 today, and we're going to start with example 3. It will help if you number these examples. So 1, 2, we're down to example 3 to begin. Which has this picture of the triangle on it. Okay, so example 3 says, what is the measure of the hypotenuse if the legs measure 6 and 8? So the triangle's shown right here, and it's labeled. So we know that it's a right triangle, first of all, because the little square in the corner says that that's 90 degrees. That's a right triangle. So what that means is we can use the Pythagorean theorem. So we're going to start by writing it. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And then we're going to label our triangle. Well, C is already labeled. That's the longest side here. It's always going to be the side. C will always be directly across from your 90-degree angle if you're unsure. Okay, and then we're going to label A and B. I like to go in order. So 6 is my shortest, and then 8 is my next shortest, and then C we don't know. So I labeled 6 with A, and 8 with B, and C we don't know. Now what we're going to do is we're going to substitute the numbers that are given. So instead of A squared, we're going to write 6 squared. Instead of B squared, we're going to write 8 squared. And instead of C squared, well, we don't know C, so we're going to leave it C squared. Now, you might want a calculator here, and I'm going to get one out a second. And I'm going to show you on the calculators how we can type these things in if you don't already know the answers. So, let me remind you that 6 squared really means 6 times 6, and 8 squared means 8 times 8. These we should be able to do in our head. However, on a calculator, as we get going, we might have some decimals and things like that. So the key that you want to use for 6 squared, 6, and then the caret key, which is right here above our parenthesis on the calculators we use in my class. But the caret key looks like an upside down triangle, or a TP. So there's that one. So 6 caret 2. So that one is 36. If you want to do 8 squared, you would do the same, except for with 8. You would do 8 caret 2, and you see that that's 64, also known as 8 times 8. We do not know C squared, so we're going to leave it C squared right now. Okay, in this case, we can add up, since 36 and 64 are on the same side of the equal sign, we can add that up. So 36 plus 64 is 100. Equals C squared. So remember that squared means something times itself. So like 6 squared was 6 times 6, and that gave us 36. Well, to undo a squared, we do something called the square root. So the last step here, to undo that is we're going to take the square root of 100 to get the value of plane C. So what times itself equals 100? And that is 10. So our answer is C equal 10. Now, if you want to do that in your calculator, there is a square root key on the calculator. Okay, so if you take a look here, the square root key is right in the middle of the calculator that I have. It looks like this. You would press it. Now, on our calculators, there's a parenthesis that pops up. We would put 100 in. You have to end the parenthesis before you hit equals, and then you can get that answer in your calculator. Okay, let's do the next example. All right, so what is the measure of the hypotenuse if the legs of a right triangle measure 8 and 15? So in this case, there is no right triangle pictured. So you have a choice. You can either know it by reading it, or you can draw your own, okay? So if I draw my own triangle, don't have to be a super good artist to do that. We know it's a right triangle, so I'm going to draw a right triangle. And it says the legs measure 8 and 15. So I'm going to make the two shorter sides be 8 and 15. And what is the measure of the hypotenuse? So that's the one that is blank, the one that is the longest side. Okay, so since we have a right triangle, we use the Pythagorean theorem again. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, good. So we're going to label around my triangle. We're going to start by labeling C always, which is the longest side, and then go back and label A and B. So shortest side is 8, so I'll make that A. Next shortest is 15, so I'll make that B. And then I'm going to substitute the numbers in. So A squared is 8 squared, B squared is 15 squared, and C squared we don't know, so we're going to leave it. Now, using your calculator or your brain, 8 squared or 8 times 8 is 64. 15 squared, using your calculator or using your brain, is 225. And C squared we don't know yet. Now, since these are on the same side of the equal sign, we can add them together. So 64 plus 225 is 289. And that is C squared. That means that something times itself is 289. We need to figure out what that something is. So if you know the square root of 289, go ahead and do it. If you don't know it in your head, you can use your calculator to get this answer. Again, I'll show you. So you're going to use square root button, type in 289, end the parenthesis, press equals, and you find the answer to C. That length is 17. Oops, sorry, can't see that on screen. Okay, good. So that's how we find the hypotenuse. Now, in order to find one of the legs, we do this a little bit different. I know there's an example at the bottom here, but we're actually going to cross that out because our picture got cut off. So if you go to the next page, at the top, you'll see the picture. Okay, and so I just rewrote the example directions in. It says, find the value of side length A. And if you can't see it really well, this is side A that's labeled right here. Okay, so this says 12, this says 13. So we know it's a right triangle. So again, we can use the Pythagorean theorem. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared. That's our formula. And then before we begin, we want to make sure we label. Well, A is already labeled. We want to find the longest side across from the right triangle right here. That one has to be C. And then that means that this side here that's left is B. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to substitute in what we know. So A, we don't know A. We're going to leave it A squared. B is 12, so we'll make that 12 squared. And C this time is 13. We know that one, so we'll make that 13 squared. So this time we know the value on the right side of the equation, so we're going to do it a little bit different. All right, leave A squared alone, so we'll keep that. 12 squared is 12 caret 2, or 12 times 12, that's 144. And 13 squared, 13 caret 2, or 13 times 13 is 169. Okay, so now notice that we don't have the two numbers on the same side of the equal sign. They're on opposite sides. So what we have to do to solve it is we have to undo that plus 144. So we're actually going to cancel it by subtracting the 144 here and canceling it, and then we're going to subtract it on this side, okay? And so now what we're left with, and I know I'm creeping in here, but a squared then equals 169 minus 144, and that's going to give us 25. And so now we're down to something squared equals 25. And so we're trying to figure out what number times itself is 25. And so the way to do that is to take the square root of 25. That will give us the value of a. And so you might know that in your head, or if you don't, use your calculator again. Square root of 25 is 5. That's the value of a. Okay? Good. Let's try one more, and that'll be it for our notes for today. Last one is going to be our example 7 here. Again, no picture on this one, so you can either draw your own picture, or as you get better at it, you're going to be able to just jump in using Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so it says find the length of B if A equal 2 and C equal 4. We're assuming this is a right triangle here. I guess it should have said that we have a right triangle to specify, but let's assume it is a right triangle. Okay, let's draw a picture. So, a right triangle, not too hard to draw, okay? Do the best you can, make your right angle in there, and it says find the length of B if A equal 2, so I'm going to make my smallest side 2, and right away I'm going to label it A. And C equal 4, I'm going to make my longest side 4, and I'm going to label that C, and the one that's missing is B this time. Okay, so since it's a right triangle, we're going to use Pythagorean theorem, okay, and so we're going to start with that same formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And then we're going to substitute what we know. So a is 2, so let's make that 2 squared. We do not know b, so leave it b squared, and c squared is 4 squared. Okay, well, 2 times 2 is 4. We don't know b squared, leave it alone for a second. And 4 squared, or 4 times 4, is 16. Okay, again, we know these are not on the same side. We're missing a value here. So our option is not to add these, but we need to cancel out that 4. So we're going to subtract it here to cancel it, subtract it over here to keep that balanced. So now we know b squared is 16 minus 4, which is going to give us 12. So what number times itself gives us 12? Well, that one's a hard one to figure out in our head. So you want to make sure you're using your calculator here. So the square root of 12 is going to give me the value of b. So let's figure that out. On your calculator, square root of 12, end your parenthesis, equal. And you get this big long decimal because it's not a perfect square. So we'll round it to the nearest tenth. So 3.464 we'll round to about, and so we make a squiggly equal sign, 3.5 is our b value. Okay, that is the lesson for our initial lesson of Pythagorean theorem. If you have me for math, our assignment today looks like this. It says Pythagorean theorem on the top, and it's got several different questions. All of them use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And if you have questions, please feel free to email me, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Have a great day, everybody.